as rare as unicorn blood. Please note that all names, characters, and scenes portrayed in this story are pure fiction. This novel was created out of my own imagination, but highly inspired by true events and urban legends. No identification with actual persons, living or deceased, or with places or buildings is intended or should be inferred. This is a story of an animal so rare it's never been seen in the wild. It is said that it only lives in captivity, the hybrid between a lion and a tigress.
First chapter: A Tigress in Africa. In 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, a battle royale was about to happen. 5 intruding lions were surrounding the resident male, whom we called Romeo, not to tell his real local name, so we can keep anonymous the animals, the area, and the people involved, if any. Romeo is one of those huge legendary males that fears nothing, but at 5 versus 1, even this 500-pound cat is no match against the intruders. Still, he stays put, observing them, like in slow motion. His whole life goes through his mind. Even though it's not the first time he encounters them, today the entire coalition is here, all 5 of them. And these lions are not here for a fight, but for an extermination. The 5 slowly invade Romeo's territory, passing by Juliet the lioness, whom we also changed the name, and with whom Romeo had 4 cubs. These are young adults now, 3 females and 1 male, called Divok. But Divok is no longer present with the pride. He went on a quest in order to find a pride of his own, accompanied by his weird giant half-brother a few months ago. Romeo stands alone now, with the lionesses, which he hopes he can rely on. But Juliet might have other plans for her daughters. Perhaps 5 strong adult males could provide better protection for the pride. And what's even more interesting is having new blood, new genes for her daughter's cubs. Without even having a look at Romeo, Juliet rapidly joins the 5 males. Her daughters are still inexperienced and decide to stay behind. Confused, the daughters only observe what's happening for now. Still, it is obvious for them that this is a war Romeo can't win, even with the help of the entire pride. One of the males gets distracted by Juliet, while the others continues their way toward Romeo. At this moment, Romeo realizes he just lost everything. He slowly starts to back down as he watches Juliet making moves at one of them, offering herself to him. But his escape is late to come. Finally, he takes the same direction his 2 sons took almost a year ago. 4 of the intruders pursue him. Letting him escape is not in their plan. One of them managed to get to him first. That was a mistake, and Romeo quickly takes advantage of it. He brutally brings his opponent to the ground. Then he starts running again. But the 3 others gain ground on him, and Romeo has no other choice but to face them once and for all. Two of them aim at his back legs. The third tries to bite him at the throat. Romeo resists but gets injured. He is bleeding a lot, and at this moment he takes another look at Juliet. The fifth lion is still with her. His spirit is broken. He is in pain, and his strength has gone. There's no way out.
In order to better understand what will happen next, we need to go back in the year 2013, when a tigress was brought to Africa anonymously in a desperate cause. Some Russian scientists, out of hope, took the risk in an attempt to save the tigress's life by sending her to one of their former colleagues now located in Africa.
In Russia, the devastated team of zoologists can't find what's wrong with their Siberian tigress. Alexis, one of the scientists on the site, put his hand on his forehead. He's watching from the window the falling snow outside the research center. Then he says, "Looks like she just doesn't want to live anymore."
This situation is very discouraging. I have no choice. We have to ask for Andrei's help, says Mila, the scientist in charge. Then Alexis adds, "At this point, we have nothing to lose." Then Michael, the third scientist, says maybe Andrei has several faults, but he remains nevertheless the greatest specialist that I know. "Thank you, Michael. What does that make us?" says Alexis with an attitude. "I am saying this with no disrespect. It also includes myself, you know," adds Michael. "Well then, speak for yourself," says Alexis. "Nobody is at fault here. The problem is that I asked him to choose between Africa and me. We now know the rest," says Mila. "We are going from a desperate cause to another," says Alexis with anger.
Sometime later in Africa, Dr. Andrei Kurbatov's phone rings, and it's Mila. She explains the situation. She tells him that she named the tigress Sasha, like their lost daughter. But Kurbatov refuses to return to Russia. Troubled, they finally agree to send the tigress to Africa. A few days later, the plane landed at the airport with Sasha on board. Dr. Kurbatov is already there waiting for his precious cargo. "Oh my God, is she dead?" asks Gabriel, the doctor's new assistant. "She is weak, exhausted, fragile, but she is alive," Mila says, while taking the vital signs of the tigress. Then an employee transfers the cage of the tigress to Dr. Andrei Kurbatov's van, and without saying a word, Mila gets back on the plane, while Sasha takes the direction of the Dr. Kurbatov's animal refuge at the natural park. An enclosure of almost 1 acre is reserved for Sasha, but For the time being, the Tigress remains under observation in her cage inside the facilities of the animal refuge. Romeo, a very popular lion here, is outside in a nearby enclosure, awaiting rehabilitation in the park. All night long, we can hear him roar. The next morning, against all expectations, Sasha is standing up in her cage. In a matter of just a few days, Sasha seems out of harm's way. She's now ready to move in her enclosure and feels the light of day. A few days later, in the natural park, Wally is feeding the animals. He's one of the few park's employees and an old friend of Dr. Andrei Kurbatov. He got very attached to Romeo, the star of the refuge. He's the one who found him in the poacher's trap. Now, soon Romeo will be released back into the wild. Alone in her enclosure, Sasha's been observing Romeo's every moves. Then one day at the refuge, all the park staff gathered. It is Romeo's graduation day. We attract Romeo to a cage and put it in a van. Then Dr. Kubatov, Gabriel, Wally, and a film crew set off for the savannah. Sasha, who observed the operation from her yard, follows the scientist vehicles to the back fence. Then she climbs on her two hind legs. By placing her front legs high in the fence, she watches Romeo move away until he disappears. The next day, somewhere in the park, Dr. Kobatov and his team observe Romeo. The lion has been released near a group of 5 lionesses and their cubs. This is his own pride, and the lionesses welcomes Romeo. But 4 subadult males seems to choose to ignore Romeo. They are in some way related to him. We believe these are his dead brother's sons. He got killed by the poachers, the same who trapped Romeo many months ago. We will call them his stepsons. In some way, Romeo is only taking his old place back. Pushing the stepsons off his territory seems not in his plan for the time being. Returning to the refuge the next day, Sasha runs to the fence as the vehicles of Dr. Kurbatov's team approach. But no Romeo in sight. Sasha has had ups and downs since Romeo's absence. A few months later, back into Romeo's territory, the 4 young males of the pride got bigger. But they also think bigger. They could eventually become a threat for Romeo. At the shelter during this time, Wally noticed Sasha's disappearance. Gabriel, Sasha has disappeared. What are you talking about? Asked Gabriel. I looked everywhere. She's gone, answers Wally. The same evening, the doctor arrives at the refuge. He prepares the things they will need for the search. I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't talk about this to anyone. Might cause scandal. Imagine tourists taking pictures of her, says Gabriel. I agree, this is not the Tiger Park, says Wally. I thought I could go there for advice if things went wrong, says Kurbatov. Well, things are actually going very wrong, Doctor, says Gabriel. Then the doctor leaves aboard the SUV. Meanwhile, in the savannah, an intruder explores
new territories. Sasha walks around with not so much concerns of other animals. The tigress is in her prime and used to be at the top of the food chain in Siberia. But this is Africa, and this place contains a whole host of powerful foes. If Dr. Andrei Kurbatov fails to find his tigress very soon, anything can happen. The tigress saw some commotion on the horizon. Two hyenas devour a freshly killed wildebeest. Sasha heads quickly to the place of the feast. The hyenas have never seen a tiger before, but they know it's better to give way. In the savannah, while searching for Sasha, Dr. Kurbatov received a phone call. It's Mila. Hey Mila, how are you? He asked. First, give me news of Sasha. How is she doing? She is ready to return to Russia, duh? She asked. Last time I saw Sasha, she was doing very well, he answers. I want my tigress to come home. You told me she could be back very soon, says Mila. I need to keep her for observation. Only then I will send her back, answers Kurbatov. Well, if she is in good shape, I will observe her here if you don't mind, says Mila. I am not sure this is a good idea, he says. Listen, the department here has invested a lot of resources in this project, she says. You want the truth? Asked Kurbatov. No, I do not want the truth. I want my Sasha, answers Mila. I am sorry, Mila. Let us say there is good news and bad news, the doctor says. I do not like this at all. What is going on, Andrei? Asked Mila. Well, your tigress, Sasha, she fled from the refuge, he finally says. What are you saying? Where is she now? Asked Mila. Somewhere in the park, answers Kurbatov. You will never find her. We did all this for nothing, says Mila, very angry. There is still some good news, Kurbatov says. I do not see any good news. This is catastrophic, says Mila. Listen to me. If she managed to escape, at least it shows how well she became, says Kurbatov. Do you find that funny? Mila says. I am sorry, Mila, but please do not give up. Pah, makes Mila. Sasha continues to roam the park, perhaps in search of Romeo. But for the moment, she seems to be looking for food. She scents the remains of a wildebeest carcass. It turns out it's only the skull and a few bones. Then she notices on the horizon a whole herd. She quickens the step in that direction. Sasha has not hunted her prey by herself for a while now. The last time was in Siberia and in very different conditions. She approaches her goal without paying attention to the owners of the place. She is trespassing without knowing it. She ventured deep into the territory of the red lions. Here, two brothers reign as absolute masters. These two lions are famous. The dominant one mostly limits his action by marking his territory. But maybe he could make an exception for a tigress. This situation is exactly what worries the doctor. Tigers out of control in an African tourist area. The presence of Sasha on the territory of the red lions has not yet been noticed, and the wildebeest are the first to pay the price. As soon as she has chosen her prey, Sasha takes one down. She quickly immobilizes it on the ground. All this commotion attracted the curiosity of the pride. Three of the lionesses run to the location of the killing. Sasha quietly takes back her breath when she notices the threat. But she is determined and has no intention of giving up her meal. Rather than retreating, Sasha rushes toward the lionesses. They did not expect such a reaction, and two of them stop, while the youngest confronts Sasha alone. Quickly, the young lioness finds herself in difficulty. Sasha has the upper hand, but it doesn't last when the other two come into action. Sasha is being attacked from all sides. All of a sudden, the wildebeest gets up and escapes. He had only lost consciousness. All were shocked, and Sasha takes the opportunity to flee at her turn. From a distance, Sasha observes the wildebeest joining the herd. All this makes her thirsty, and she decides to aim for the river not far away. The water is full of hippos. She doesn't know those kinds of animals. Her instinct keeps her on her guard. During this time, the pride of the red lions resurfaces. Either they too are thirsty, or they followed her here in order to retaliate. The pride is a serious threat. Sasha must find a way to get to the other side of the river. Fortunately, unlike lions, tigers enjoy water. She waits on the shore, staring at the hippos, then makes a run for it. Halfway to the other side, crocs start to make a move. She may have managed to avoid a clash with the pride only to find herself in the jaws of hungry crocodiles. Sasha hastens to cross. As she touches the bottom, she turns her head to scan the horizon and sees on the other side several members of the Red Lion's pride. None has risked to venture in the croc-infested water. Relieved, Sasha gets slowly out of the water when suddenly something pulls her back to sea. She clings to whatever she can with her claws in the sand and the mud. She managed to partially come out of the water. It's a crocodile of more than 10 feet long, and his goal is to drown her. Luckily, he doesn't have such a good grip. She turns around on herself and bites the reptile on his neck. Today, she is finally going to eat. During a few weeks, Sasha feeds mostly on crocs. Then one day, something disturbs the plenitude of a riverside. An imposing, angry hippopotamus comes claiming the territory. No other animal on earth has such a constant high level of testosterone, and he passes very close to Sasha. The tigress is extremely nervous and climbs back in her tree. Everything in the path of the pretender flees in front of him. All flee, except the beach master. And he too is filled with testosterone. He rushes toward the newcomers and follows a fight of titans. The old beach master finds himself in difficulty. Too many pretenders, too many fights. And finally, the old master of the place is dethroned. The new beach master continues to clean up, and that starts by killing the youngest member of the group. Just like lions, hippos commit infanticide when there's a takeover. All this commotion happens next to Sasha. She seems uncomfortable with its presence and decides to venture into the savannah. Few days later, Sasha emerges from the tall grass, hungry but no longer limping because of the croc bites. Close by, she finds two young cheetah and their mother. They've just killed a Thompson gazelle. Sasha saw them. She runs toward them without hesitation. The three cheetahs are furious but give way. Sasha continues on her way, and this time she arrives directly in the territory of a very large clan of spotted hyenas. In order to enlarge their territory, these formidable predators managed to repel a pride of lions. At the time, the pride had no dominant male. Sasha scans the horizon and weighs her options. Meanwhile, Romeo starts to have doubts regarding his four stepsons' allegiance. They tend to ignore the rules of hierarchy. Romeo's been patient so far, but since he has already mated with one of the lionesses, called Juliet, it is quite possible that the pride change heirs. If he can't have them submitted to him, this might put the security of the cubs to come at risk. Romeo decides to slowly strutting in front of them. He shows his sides in order to expose his strong build and the scope of his mane. We're now in 2014. 5 months have passed since Romeo joined the Pride. Juliet has given birth to 4 cubs, fathered by Romeo. The 4 stepsons are almost 3 years old now, and today they noticed Juliet's absence. The mother of the little ones remains nervous. She tries to hide them carefully. The confrontation between Romeo and the stepsons seems inevitable. This situation risks ending in the death of a lion. And recently, not to help make things easier, 2 nomadic males lurk in the area. They are members of a coalition of 5 lions, and they are in search of a pride and ready for a takeover. For some times, Sasha keeps wandering around looking for food, feeding on scraps. Right now, she moves further away from her river shore, deep in hyena's territory. Then they attract her attention. They are very numerous, more than 20, and they are devouring the remains of a huge buffalo recently killed by a group of lionesses. These bold spotted hyenas were able to repulse the lionesses from their kill. Back in the Pride's territory, the lionesses return from the hunt. Romeo realizes that things have turned out badly. He is starving and should go support them in the hunt, but he has something else on his mind. He probably fears that the young males take the opportunity to seek and kill his cubs. Juliet is with him. She waits for the stepsons to leave before going back to the hiding place. of her cubs, and this looks like the right time. Romeo knows there is food not far from them. He needs to feed himself if he wants to remain dominant male of the pride. Suddenly, Romeo realized the stepsons are leaving for the place of the killing. He decides to join them. Juliet remains alone, still worried about her cub's safety from the stepsons. She returns to the hiding spot where she left them and comes face to face with something much worse. She's on her own, and the two large males of the coalition already have eyes on her cubs. Somewhere, not far from there, Sasha, still hungry, watches the hyenas. He seems to be on alert, fearing the lioness's return. Then, without notice, she takes her chance and goes for it. The hyenas give way by mistaking this move for the lioness's comeback in force. Sasha barely takes a few bites before the hyenas charge again once they find out the trickery. She gets surrounded and attacked from all sides, failed to repel the hyenas. She's in a desperate situation. She tries to escape by jumping very high, but the hyenas are too many. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a lion rushes into the crowd. The hyenas runs for their lives. Then some other lion follows. Once again, Sasha profits from the confusion and makes a run for it. At the scene of the killing, Romeo tries to intimidate the other males in order to grab the king's share. Not aware of the bad situation Juliet got herself in. An adult buffalo represents a large portion of food for the pride. Made up of 8 lionesses and 5 lions, no one would be able to steal their 1-ton meal, unless a quarrel breaks out from within the pride and jeopardizes the plans. Here, the situation escalates. The young males attack Romeo. They want to take advantage of the situation to show him who's in charge now. They are determined not to let Romeo eat in peace. All 4 young males try to intimidate him. Then a fight starts between them. Sasha and the hyenas have remained at distance, each in their corner observing the scene in hope of any opportunity. On her own, Sasha can do much. But on the other hand, the hyenas have more options. They decide to pass on the offensive while the males are having their quarrel. And for the second time, the lionesses are forced to abandon their kill. Frustrated, the lionesses of the pride get enraged. But the hyenas are too numerous. There is little they can do, so they decide to wear the anger towards the males, which in doing so gives Romeo a little respite in all this chaos. Romeo managed to escape the stepson's attack. Sasha seems to understand what's going on, but most of all, looks like she recognized Romeo and focused on him from a distance. If only the lionesses were supportive of Romeo. But this is only anger out of frustration from being robbed of their meal by the hyenas. This toxic relation within the pride dissuades Romeo even more. He has no intention to submit and takes the opportunity to get away before being severely injured. Then the pride gets back at the carcass and chase away the hyenas for good. Curiously, Sasha follows Romeo. She definitely recognizes the star lion of the refuge. Perhaps the explanation for Sasha's escape from the refuge is in her feelings towards Romeo.
The two of them were separated when Romeo was brought back to his pride, right in the middle of the period of Sasha's oestrus. This period, caused by hormones, is about to start again. It's twilight already, and Romeo is covered in bites. Fortunately, nothing serious. The big male smells something strange, probably the scent of other lions. After turning around all night in search of Juliet, he finds no signs of her nor the cubs. The next morning, Sasha doesn't seem in a rush to find food, but rather demonstrates her needs to mate toward Romeo. This one seems more or less attentive to her calls. Nevertheless, he seems to appreciate her presence. Maybe he recognized her, and this reminds him of the peaceful time of the refuge. Romeo suddenly returns in the direction of the pride. Sasha prefers the river shore, but her hormones keep pushing her to stir up the lion. Romeo tries to understand her real intention. But something seems to bring Romeo back to the pride. For the entire day, Sasha followed Romeo to the place she wanted so much to leave. We do not yet see the members of the pride, but we clearly hear the sound of their roar, shameless of their betrayal. It's the young males claiming the territory for themselves. Suddenly, Romeo stops. He doesn't seem to care so much. Then he feels the ground, he scans the horizon, and lowers his head several times to smell something on the ground. Sasha approaches. She notices the four little dead cubs in the tall grass. But this wasn't the work of the stepsons. The smell of nomadic males reveals whose work this is. Then Romeo gets attracted by the sound of heavy breathing. Sasha pulls back. She hears in the distance the menacing roars of the other males. Romeo walks quietly, attracted by the breathing. It's Juliet, lying in her own blood in the tall grass. She was left alone, defending her little ones without hope. She now finds herself in a very bad condition. Other lions have come to prowl around here. The four young kings don't know yet what awaits them. As for Juliet, she's no longer able to hunt. She has little chances of surviving in such a state. Romeo stays a little more with her, then turns around towards Sasha. The tigress gives him a cuddle. Romeo caresses his mane on her side. There is nothing left for him here, so they take the direction of the river. Romeo and Sasha reached the river shore. Once pregnant, Sasha could leave Romeo and get on with her life like tigresses usually do. But she could also enjoy the security of the company of a protective male, like the lionesses do here in Africa. It's been a week since Romeo saw Juliet the last time. She was in very bad shape, but against all odds, she resurfaces, fragile, thirsty, hungry, and limping. She comes to the river banks to drink. Sasha seems to understand that Juliet is not a threat. She finally catches a break.
and eat the remain of a crocodile left there by Romeo and Sasha.
Then one morning we hear few gunshots in the distance. The rainy season is approaching. On the tourist trails, we rarely see any excursion vehicle. There are hardly any visitors, and the park wardens are scarce, which leaves room for poachers. Luckily for our three felines, the poachers were looking for ivory. Unfortunately for this splendid male elephant that got killed, mutilated, and stripped of his tusk, his adventure ends here in the height of his glory, in a brutal and unjust way. The only consolation is knowing that his death will not be in vain. Romeo, Sasha, and Juliet will feed on his carcass. After some days, the pachyderm's meat no longer tastes the same. They decide to leave the remains to the hyenas and the vultures. Then the trios head back to the river. The river overflown from its bed, and much larger crocodiles appears. The horde of wildebeest is gone. Sasha and Romeo are focused on the crocodile-infested waters. Juliet looks at them. She seems confused. Then Sasha gets into action. She rapidly investigates the riverbanks, then finds a croc small enough for them to hunt. Rapidly, Romeo joins in. They manage to make a kill. Spring is now coming. Soon in the distance we hear a vehicle approaching, and unlike the other animals in the park, Sasha is called out by the approaching SUV. If these are poachers, her curiosity could be fatal. Aboard the SUV, Wally takes out his binoculars. "Sasha, Romeo, it's them!" Wally yells, pulling out his walkie-talkie. Then continues to shoot up, this time into the microphone. "It's them! I found them! It's them!" "But who them? Calm down, Wally," says Gabriel. "I found Sasha, and Romeo is with her. And also there's a lioness." "Sasha? Our Tigress is alive?" "Yes, I'm looking at them. They are side by side, and Sasha has a big round belly." Wally, Gabriel, and Dr. Andrei Kobatov aboard a vehicle are looking for Sasha, right in the area where Wally had seen her a few days ago. Suddenly, Gabriel shouts, "Look out, it's Ernest." "What's he doing here?" asks Wally. "He expands his territory," Kobatov answers. "Typical of a rhino. He's proportional to his ego," adds Wally. "And why do we call him Ernest?" Gabriel asks. "Ernest Hemingway, you know," says Wally. "The writer, of course," says Gabriel. "Well, the doctor cursed him," Wally adds. "Cursed? But to who? To Hemingway or to the rhino?" Gabriel asks. "Well, Hemingway, the man, of course. This is because we believe Hemingway was not being very nice to the African rhinos. And in order to punish him, our dear doctor decided he had to be reincarnated in one of these, facing extinction as a punishment," explains Wally. Then, a little further, "Here they are," says Kobatov. All three had their eyes on Sasha. She was giving milk to her newborn cub while observing the doctor's vehicle suspiciously. "A small liger. There is only one," says Gabriel. "He's a day old, or maybe two at most," says Wally. Later the same day, "I wonder what name we're going to give to this one," asked Gabriel. "We should not rush anything. It might not be worth it. This cub has little chance to survive,
And remember, we have to send the Tigress back to Russia soon, says Kolbatov. Doctor, you're not serious, asks Wally. Oh, this is so unfair. A liger in the wild. It is so unique, Gabrielle adds. We can't let Mila decide for everything, says Wally. She brought us a dying tigress. We saved her. We should be the ones who decide, Gabrielle says. Okay, okay. We know where they are. The cub has just been born. For the moment, there is no urgency, Kurbatov adds. Hush, hush, says Wally while giving a hug to Gabrielle. Just make sure no tourist comes around here, adds Kurbatov talking to Wally. No one came here so far, so I will do my best to make sure it stays that way, says Wally. Then they drive back to the refuge. Few days later, Romeo comes face to face with the old beach master. This old hippo had to fight too many pretenders. He was exhausted. He tried to walk down this little hill not far from the river. Bad fortune put a dead tree on his path. A sharp branch coming out of the ground impaled him. It sank into his side between two ribs and hit right in the heart. His fall was fatal. But this will provide plenty of food for many days. Juliet observes Shasha giving milk to her cub while Romeo sleeps in the shade of an old tree by the river. The lioness now has a big round belly too. Later, we will learn that the name given to the liger, Sasha's cub, will be COVID. But this is only in a few more years. And first chapter, A Tigress in Africa.